All right, what's going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Talking Buffalo podcast, part of the Blue Wire Network. I am your charming host, Patrick Moran. Thank you very much for locking in, whether it's on Spotify or Apple on the audio side or YouTube on the video side. It's Wednesday, so we are continuing our second now in a 5-week series of full 7 rounds simulated in real time Buffalo Bills mock drafts. That means I got my good buddy, Aaron Quinn from Cover One with me. How's it going, buddy? What's up?
It's terrible, man. It's late March. It was 18 degrees the last couple of days, snowing. The sun was out at least today and melted all that snow. But dude, I know you're a guy that likes to complain about the weather up here in the cold, and you start all the way in
January.
Halloween. We were talking about this, I think, in October. You and I were talking about how bad the weather was, but March is where I lose all my patience, and I hate every minute of it, dude. This month is drunk. It's gonna be 65 and raining tomorrow, and then it's gonna be back into the 30s probably. I hate it. And other than that, things are fantastic.
I lose patience. I deal with it. I suffer until after Christmas. Once it gets to be January, that's when misery just it starts to kick in. I hate it too, man. It sucks, but whatever. Sooner or later, it'll be nice. I'll tell you what. So this is the Buffalo Bills mock draft. Let's not lose sight of what we're doing here today. So I couldn't think of a better way to start a Buffalo Bills mock draft than by paying homage to Phil Collins. You're a Phil Collins guy, man.
I do like Phil Collins a lot.
Love you like Phil. You just tweeted about him the other day. Yeah. So Phil Collins, who is ill. I mean, he's got a lot of ailments. He's got a vertebrae injury in his neck. He can't walk anymore. He's got some form of pancreatic, I don't know what's a cancer, but I know he's got some kind of issues like that. He literally can't walk. He does his shows. He's been on tour with Genesis, and he's been doing them on stage, or I should say in a wheelchair, because he literally can't walk. But anyway, 71 years old, which, I mean, that's not very old for being as bad of shape as he's in physically right now. But he in London this weekend with Genesis performed for the last time ever.
Crazy.
I'd be remiss. Again, I have you on the pod, man. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up. Are you a Phil Collins? And I'm sure you're going to say both because that's the easy answer. But if I was forcing you to pick one, are you more of a Phil Collins ballad guy, or are you more of a Phil Collins? And we'll use Genesis as well for this up-tempo song kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean,
that's tough.
Both is the easy answer, right? Like, it's sort of like Billy Joel, right? Like they can do both things. They can rock and bring it down a little bit for the ballad. So it depends the vibe I'm in, for sure. But I can go on a tear of both, just the ballad, slower stuff all day long, or flip it over to the more upbeat stuff. But it was funny because I actually just had this conversation. I forget what album my wife was talking about. We listen to a lot of kids soundtracks in my house these days, Encanto, Moana, all these things. And we were talking about how Moana's a really great soundtrack, and like my wife was like, this might be one of the better kids soundtracks ever. And I was like, well, let's like pump the brakes, right? Tarzan's still out there. Tarzan exists. And she's like, Tarzan, what, you think that's a great album? And I started playing it. She's like, holy cow, like this is a good album. Like Phil Collins, everything the dude touched, even kids movie soundtracks, he freaking nailed them every time, dude. Everything he did.
Yeah, I lean slightly, not a lot, but I lean slightly towards his ballads, a little bit better. Yeah, I am. I'm a ballad guy. I'm a sucker for that shit. I can't help it. Against all odds to this day, probably a top 5.
The live at what was it, Curades or whatever, the
Live Aid,
the big Live Aid, that live version of Against All Odds, man, might be the best thing ever.
Yeah, he did. He crushed it. Before we get going, too, I do want to get your take. Now it's been a couple days, and I'm sick of reading about it. I'm sick of seeing it. I'm sick of everything. I go on TikTok and I can't swipe up 3 times without seeing a video of Will Smith slapping Chris Rock.
You loved it though the night of. You even tagged me because I was making fun of the Oscars, and you tagged. You said,
okay. First, some context here. Before the Oscars started, let me say this. All right.
That was not a subtweet. My tweet was not a Pat Moran subtweet. Just so you know.
Your tweet is you just don't give a shit about the Oscars. You called it.
It was all over my timeline, and I'm like, really?
I can't remember word for word. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but you said it's irrelevant. I remember that.
A draw. There's no draw.
Right. I was like, this happened, and I immediately tagged you. I'm like, oh, really? But I wasn't happy about. I don't want. This isn't about my take. I want to get your take on.
Sure.
Obviously, you didn't need to watch the Oscars unless you live under a rock. You know exactly all the details.
Yeah, if you woke up the next day, it was
what happened. And even if you're trying to avoid it, don't matter, man. It could be ESPN, CNN. It don't matter what you put on. Don't matter what app you open up on your phone, what website you go to. 48 hours later, this is still what everybody's talking about. I want to get your take on what happened and how. Well, there was no Will Smith was not in the right. I don't think you're going to go that far to say it, but like the way it played out, like what's your interpretation of it? What do you think?
So a lot of people are saying Will Smith was in the right. Like I've seen a lot of people being like, "Oh yeah, that's how you defend your woman. You know, don't talk smack. You're gonna get hit. Whatever." Like, I think Will Smith was totally in the wrong in this situation. Like, I do feel bad because I do think Jada Pinkett has some personal issues with the hair loss, and so for him to make that joke's probably lowbrow. I don't know if he knew that personally or not, but it was just a joke and. This is gonna sound weird. I'm sure people will come at me the wrong way on this. I'm not one of these guys that's gonna get up here and pound the table about cancel culture and things like that. But comedians are a little bit under attack. I love stand-up comedy. I love comedians. I love that whole culture. Tough Year, Norm Macdonald passing away, Bob Saget passing away. Like those guys love that whole scene. And year in and year out, like it's getting a little bit weirder about what are comedians allowed to talk about? What are they allowed to say? And so for him to take that clearly just a joke and go up and physically assault somebody was just really weird. It was out of context. At first I thought it was, I think you posted, I thought it was like a wrestling. It was like a shoot. Like
it was a work. It was a work. Like it's a work. Is it a work or a shoot? Yeah.
Is it a work or a shoot? Yeah. And I mean, the fact that Will Smith was like, he was for real after when he sat down, he's cussing him out and you could see it in his eyes. Like he wouldn't jeopardize his career.
Right.
In that way, so it wasn't a work, but it felt like a work. When I saw that, I was like, man, everybody, there's not a lot of interest in the Oscars. It's been fading for years. What better way? This is a Vince McMahon classic. Like what better way to get everybody talking about your show than to do something dramatic like this? So it worked for that people are talking about the Oscars for the first time outside of the crazies like you that watch all the Oscar movies and sit down and watch the Oscars. Everyone was talking about it. So I guess it's good for business in Hollywood, but it's a weird look. No one else besides Hollywood actors could get away with walking up on stage and slapping somebody across the face without having massive, but like, dude, if I walked up in a store and smacked somebody across the face, like I'd be dealing with that for a long time. I'd have assault charges. I'd have to be dealing with court. Like that would be a mess in my life, but Will Smith will get away with it. And it'll just be talked about here for this news cycle and then it will go away.
I'll tell you this. I agree with you fully. I think you said it. Everything in terms of how I feel about what he did, I agree with. What bothers me the most, and by the way, to your point, I don't always watch all these movies so I can watch. I do watch the Oscars every year. Okay, that much I will admit to. But quite often, like probably 99% of the people who watch the Oscars, you watch one or two of those movies throughout the year, and then you have guys that you just like. Like you could be rooting for Denzel Washington and win Best Actor. You didn't have to see the tragedy of Macbeth to be rooted because you like Denzel and you want to see him win awards. Yeah. I think that's 90% of people. I've done it a couple times and I did do it this year. I watched 17 Oscar movies that totaled well over 40 hours. Crazy. So that the 6 major categories, I could have seen them all and then have a take. And I was supposed to do a podcast last week with Ben Matheson, but then I got in a little bit of a fender bender. And
I know. I meant to ask how you doing. How you feeling?
I'm sore. I'm good. I feel much better. Most of the bumps and bruises that went away. I got a really sore neck. But anyway,
more so than just general being at your age, or
yeah, it's a little more than a little bit of old age soreness. My neck is still really sore. That airbag.
Oh yeah, those things are brutal.
It was really bad. But anyway, so I was supposed to do a podcast in part. That's half the reason why I wanted to watch all these shows so I could have a little bit of fun and do a self-indulgent podcast. But anyway, I watched the show. And when this happened, at first I was like, well, it was exciting. I was like, is it fake? Is it real? I quickly realized I think this shit's real.
Yeah.
And it was. But then I quickly got annoyed. Now, personal reasons, I'm annoyed at this point because, like I said, I like to like mess around and go like, say on TikTok, for an example, you can't you can't swipe up 3 times without some kind of meme or something like that. Same thing on Twitter, Facebook. That's
I'm partially
all.
responsible. I meme that picture probably 3 or
Sure.
4
So have
times.
I
So
too, by the
I'm
way.
partially responsible.
Yeah, I had one. It was a good one too of the Packers, Aaron Rodgers getting smacked in the face every year in the playoffs. You know, the NFC smacking them. So yeah, I've had some fun with it too. But I am annoyed and I'm sad and disappointed because this year especially, and I've asked you like 3 times. I think I've told you to watch this movie now. For 2 months now, I've been advocating for Coda. This movie that I saw, I really liked it. The story itself, the movie was kind of a Cinderella story, so to speak, in its own. And then come award season, this movie became a Cinderella story on the award circuit. It came out of nowhere and it won some awards. And then Sunday night, it pulled off an upset. It won Best Picture. It beat Power the Dog. The Power the Dog was a pretty significant favorite. Coda won. The best supporting actor from that movie he's a deaf guy, and he had this incredible speech. I mean, obviously signed with an interpreter, but he dedicated it to his father, he said he was the best signer he ever known, and he got paralyzed, got injured. He dedicated it to him. Ariana DeBose from she won supporting actress from West Side Story. She gave a really good speech. She's the first Black openly queer woman to ever win an Oscar. You know, there's a lot of milestones and a lot of really good speeches and stuff. And again, Coda, the feel-good movie of the year, wins Best Picture. Ain't nobody talking about any of that shit, though, Aaron.
Yeah.
All we're talking about is Will Smith smacking Chris Rock and who was right and who was wrong and stuff like that. Not to mention,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say one more thing, too. Not to mention, freaking 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so after that, Will Smith literally wins Best Actor. He becomes just the 5th Black male to ever win an Oscar for Best Actor. Who the hell's thinking about that right now?
Well, more people are talking about that than Coda, for sure.
Yeah,
like because that was a kind of a part like built into it because his apology, or not even really apology, sort of the speech talked about the incident and what was going on. So that got some coverage. But I guess my counterpoint would be to our point prior on this conversation would, if that slap didn't happen, would anyone be talking about Coda anyway? Like with the Oscar, you know what I mean?
Point,
like maybe a little bit, they would get a little bit of shine, but I think that would fade pretty quickly anyway. And that, the Oscars don't have, I think people just don't care in the same way that they used to about Hollywood and the stars and their awards and stuff like that. I think movies are not doing as well on average as they used to year in and year out. So I think people are losing interest slowly in some of the award part of the movies. Everyone wants more Marvel and like easily consumed content. People don't want the deep movies with great acting as much as they used to.
I agree. And I'll tell you one last thing here. This isn't a movie podcast, but yeah, I watched 17 different movies, and honestly, maybe 2 or 3 of them I thought were really good. I really loved Coda and the performances. This was not a great year for movies and acting.
I do want to see King Richard. That I don't know if that's recommended.
Will Smith was good in it. He won the Oscar. I personally, my vote would have been for Andrew Garfield. I thought he should have won. That was just my personal opinion. Will Smith was the favorite and he won. But again, it's tainted. Everything else is just overshadowed.
Yeah, some of that's time on, like people are owed Oscars, things like that. So,
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Anyway, that went longer than I thought, but I want to get your thoughts because again, this is stuff that's dominating the news right now. One non-draft news item too related to the Bills and the NFL as a whole is that the overtime rule has now been changed for the playoffs only. Each team must possess the ball one time now in overtime. So obviously that is in large part a direct result of what we saw last year, which by the way is pretty funny because as this rule was announced, you heard so many people talking about Josh Allen not getting a chance. So obviously the Bills game played a big prominent role in that, but are you happy with that? What are your thoughts? And again, this is for the playoffs only, but now,
right.
If this would have been in place last year, the Bills would have had the ball. Could have went against them too if it would have been the other way around. What are your thoughts right now?
Yeah, I've always been an advocate of both teams being able to get possession. It happened to KC just a couple of years ago as well. In that Patriots game that went overtime, D Ford went off sides, and I really thought KC was going to win that game. And there was a little bit of uproar for that, and I was hoping it would change then. Then we didn't see the change, and so that was my immediate sort of reaction on the post game show was, we've seen the NFL not embrace the change that they should embrace so many times, whether it was that instance. We've had some hype on changing defensive pass interference, which I think is the one rule that needs the most change immediately. I think defensive pass interference plays a huge role in games when it shouldn't. And the league's just slow to adapt to some of those things, but then they're quick to the taunting comes out of nowhere, and it's like a legitimate rule, and it's getting called all the time. So the NFL is weird with what they will take on and what they won't take on in terms of new rules and getting some of that stuff done. But I think the interesting thing for Bills fans is a lot of the other owners, a lot of the other coaches, when they were asked about this rule change, also brought up Josh Allen. Like, this was the main part of the conversation. The catalyst of this conversation was Josh Allen was playing the best football game we've ever seen played in the and maybe NFL history, him and Patrick Mahomes.
Absolutely.
And the game was probably the best game ever. Probably the best game ever. And the Bills came up on the short side of that stick only because the rules didn't allow Josh Allen to get another chance.
Yeah.
The game just ended.
Yeah.
And I think anybody, regardless of your fan beliefs, if you're just a fan of football, you felt a little bit disappointed in that you had this emotional investment. You've never seen a game like that. I had Patriots fans, friends of mine, texting me complaining that rule. They're like, this isn't fair. Josh Allen should have got, the way he was playing, that guy should have got another chance to go out and win that game. He won the freaking game twice for this team. And the only thing that stopped him was a rule, which a coin toss allowed the other team to get the ball first. And so this fixes at least that. And I agree that I'm happy that it's just the postseason only to start. I don't know that you need this throughout the regular season. It's a long regular season. You're going to have to get that through the Players Association and get all these added rules approved by all them. That's too much. Add it for the postseason where it matters the most. You can take a loss in the regular season and get over that. But a moment like that in the postseason, that's the end of your season. And that's a lot of hard work. A lot of sacrifice and stuff goes down to a coin flip. And that shouldn't be the way it is. Not in a multi-billion-dollar business with so much money on the line. Everything's on the line. It shouldn't come down to who gets the correct call. Both teams should have a chance to answer that call. And then at least we know if Josh Allen comes out and goes 3 and out, then we know the Bills weren't supposed to win that game. But if he goes out and answers that, then, we're really talking about the greatest game in football.
You know what? I mean, with Josh Allen, I'm a knee-jerk reactor. I say this all the time. I tend to overreact to stuff. I don't think I'm overreacting when I say that I've never seen in my life. And again, I'm old, man. I've been watching football for a long time. I've never seen a quarterback play better, ever. In the history of the NFL, I've never seen a quarterback make more clutch plays when everything seemed to go against him than I seen Josh Allen in the fourth quarter and overtime. And Patrick Mahomes, to his credit, was right there too.
I was going to say they were going
it was punch for punch.
Greatest
absolutely,
game. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think Josh, because of some of the stuff he had to do with his legs to literally get first downs rushing, although Mahomes evaded a lot of sacks too with his legs. But yeah, I will say, and I like the rule too. I mean, for the playoffs only too. I agree with that. The one thing I will say that I don't think people are talking about right now that I think is, first of all, there's not going to be a lot of, I didn't look up the numbers, but there's not going to be like a lot of playoff games that even go to overtime.
It's not.
And let alone a lot where the one team gets the ball and scores and the other team, I mean, it happened to the Bills. It happened to Kansas City a couple years before that. So it's not something that's going to happen often. But you know what I think is going to be a direct result of this, Aaron, is let's just pretend for the sake of discussion here that, and by the way, I got my Aaron Quinn pen right now. I got a pen in my I don't
go live without it, buddy.
It's a habit that I got from you. But anyway, let's just pretend that things played out the way they did. Kansas City got the ball and they scored. Under the new rules, the Bills get the ball. They get another possession, right?
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen goes right down the field and he hits Gabe Davis with his 19th touchdown of the game. Here's the difference. That game to me is ending one way or the other after that touchdown, because if you're the Buffalo Bills, and I'm pretty sure another team would be the same way, you're going for 2. Do you think, you know what I'm saying? You score, Kansas City scores, they're up 7, you score, you're down 1. Are you going to kick an extra point and let Kansas City only need a field goal to win the game? Or do you trust your team, your offense, to get 3 yards and win the game right there on a 2-point conversion? I think it's going to be exciting. And I think these games are going to, if it comes down to that, it's going to come down to one play after a second touchdown, I think, as opposed to a third possession. I don't know if people have been thinking about it from that angle, but maybe, if you're the Buffalo Bills, were you going to give Kansas City the ball only needing a field goal the way the Bills defense was playing? Hell no. If you're the Bills and you got another chance and Josh Allen scores a touchdown, brings them down, you're going for 2. You're going to try to win that game right there. I think so? Anyway.
NFL coaches are much more conservative than we give them credit for being. Like, even we talk about like McDermott in Bill's Twitter universe, which I know isn't real life. Sean McDermott gets a lot of crap for being overly conservative, but he's actually one of the more aggressive coaches in the NFL by almost every measure. Mm-hmm. He's up there in the top 5 in all the measures of aggressive coaching styles and decision-making. And I could see him going for the tie and believing in his defense, even after what happened to him in KC. Like, he's just in my mind, I could see him just saying, hey, we just got to hold them. We got to get a 3 and out somewhere here. Even though you haven't been able to do it all night, these coaches for some reason think that they can scheme it up and do it. So I think it'll be more on the table. I think those conversations will be pretty intense when it happens, and like what you're going to do, because it's not a sure thing, right? Like, yeah, maybe you get it and you win the game right there, but you are also allowing yourself to lose the game without even giving your defense a chance to make that stop. So it's I don't know what the analytics are on it's not 50-50 for sure. I'm sure it's better chances than 50-50 going for 2 and converting it, but definitely a conversation those analytics guys and the coaches are having. I'm sure that starts now. That's going to be one of those things that plays out in OTAs, especially in a Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane. I know he fumbled away that 13 seconds, but it doesn't take away from the type of preparation that they do. I'm sure that they're going to go over those scenarios over and over again this summer about, hey, what happens when we get into overtime in the postseason? What are those decisions that we're going to make if we score after they score? What's going to happen? Are we going for 2? Are we going to trust our defense? Well, what are the probabilities there?
Yeah, I agree. All right, good points. Let's take a real quick break, and we're going to come right back, and we're going to get into this Buffalo Bills second mock draft of our 5-week series. Be right back. All right, I'm back with Aaron Quinn from Cover One. Real quick, so last year, this is your second year of doing this with me. Last year we did 6 of these. This year we're doing 5. That's because a certain content creating group called Cover One is going to actually be at the NFL draft this year, from what I understand.
We're excited, yeah.
I know, good. I'm just playing. That's really cool for you, man. I'm very happy.
Yeah, we're excited to be headed. You know what the most exciting thing is going to be is, I've known Eric for years now. I've been working for Eric, 5 years, maybe ish, 5, 6 years. I'm not even sure. But it's been years. And Greg came on just a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And I've seen Greg a handful of times because he lives closer, so he's in the area more. But I've only seen Eric in person like 3 times.
Yeah.
In all these years, just, if he happens to be home in the summer and things like that.
You
met us that one.
I was with you for one
time where we meet up. So I think most exciting, those are usually on like a day. We go to training camp for a day, hang out, or we go over to a restaurant and meet and greet. So I'm excited to hang out with the guys. We put so much work in together, and really outside of my wife and the people I actually work with, I probably talk to them the most. We're always texted and messaged,
Sure.
Keeping Cover One up and running. And so we're texting, talking all day. And now we get to just kind of go and spend 3 days together doing the things that we love to do, which is make Buffalo Bills content. We get to do it together. So that's going to be fun getting together with the guys.
You guys deserve it. It'll be fun. And again, you'll put out some really good content. You'll be there. But anyway, so we did one extra one last year, and I went back and I wanted to look it up because I couldn't remember. And I know you don't remember. And I haven't told you, by the way, who we drafted.
So many.
Yeah. So these are,
this is our last one. This
was our last one. This was our final mock draft last year. I went back and I looked it up, and the first pick, we don't know if it would have been a good pick or not because nobody got Jacksonville didn't get to find out either. We ended up settling on Travis Etienne. I did go back and listen to most of our podcasts last year, and Etienne and Najee Harris were both on the board, and we ended up taking Travis Etienne. And I'll tell you what, I'd stand by that right now too. But anyway, that was our first round pick. In the second round, we drafted Elijah Molden, the corner for Tennessee. who, by the way, he was starting for them by the end of the year. Pretty good prospect. So I'd be pretty happy with those first 2 picks. The one that we kind of missed on last year, and he was one of our favorites during mock draft season, is we took in the 3rd round Hamza Nasruddin.
Yeah.
I was a hard time pronouncing him. He went to the Raiders. I think he's with the Raiders. He really didn't do anything, which, by the way, we took him in round 3. And that was probably the only of all the mocks we did. I think we were always relatively close to where they got drafted, but he lasted to the 6th round.
Yeah,
so.
I remember him dropping a little bit. He was that's a good reminder. Here, go ahead, finish, and then we can talk.
Well, that was what, and then I got to the 4th round. So last year the Bills didn't have a 4th round pick, but we did trades in our final mock, and the Bills had 2 5th rounders, and we ended up trading both of them, and we took a defensive tackle, Aleem McNeil, who went to Detroit in the 3rd round in the real draft. And I looked him up, man. He had a pretty nice rookie year. He had a couple sacks, some of like 35 tackles. He was a pretty good player. So that was our final mock draft last year. What were you going to say?
And so we only picked 4 dudes?
Yeah, we picked a couple at the end, and I didn't give a shit at the end. I ran out of time to go back and listen to the last 20 minutes of it. But
yeah, sure. Nasruddin is an interesting one because I find myself having a tough time of pulling back from. There's like a click thing that happens on Twitter where somebody comes out and says they love a prospect, and then they've got like nice highlight videos. They have big size or something crazy, some crazy 40 time or something like that happens. And everyone falls in love with this idea of what that player can be. And I this happens to me too, Pat. I'm not saying, this isn't like a sub tweet conversation about anybody. I fall into this too, where then Twitter starts building up this narrative about a player as, oh yeah, this is going to be the ultimate Swiss Army knife player in the NFL. He's going to change the game. We got to get him. He's a 4th rounder. He's going to come in and be productive. He could be that big nickel, whatever it is. We all fall for it. And then the draft comes around and the guy goes 3 rounds later than you think, buried on a depth chart. Maybe he'll be a good player. I don't know. Maybe in a couple years he'll develop into a really nice player. More times than not, though, when we do look back on these mocks, I just did another thing where I looked up an article I did 4 years ago on a mock, and like some of those players are already totally irrelevant. They're not around in the league. Like, you know what I mean? Like some of them have gone on and had nice careers, but even last year, we were all pounding the table for Obi Melifonwu. And
the Syracuse corner.
And everyone's like, oh, the size, and you watch the highlights, and it's like, man, this guy can come in immediately, and he could barely get on the field for the Detroit Lions.
It's funny you say that, because in our last mock, I did listen to it again up until at least the 4th round. You went back and forth. You were agonizing between him and Molden last year.
Yeah.
So
you just don't know. And so that's one thing I've been trying. A couple of things I've told people about these mocks, right? I said it last week on your show. It's a thought exercise primarily.
Sure.
Some of these ideas, like every time I post a mock, I get some guy in my mentions being like, oh, there's no way Hall's going to be there in the 2nd round. There's no way this is going to happen. There's no way that guy's going to fall. Like, it's an exercise. We don't know where guys are. People were telling me last year, there's no way Nasruddin was going to make it to the 3rd, right? Like there's always these ideas that we have. We spend so much time from really early January to now over analyzing these prospects and looking at big boards and taking other people's advice that we're not really sure how this is going to go. And so you have these big boards, you work with what you've got, you work with the information you have, but it's a thought exercise. We don't know if these guys are going to be here. We don't know if these guys are going to be any good. Like, this is just a way to familiarize yourself with these prospects, start to learn. So when your team does draft them, you can already have a baseline of like, oh yeah, that's a guy that I like. Oh yeah, that's a guy that I heard this about. Yeah. But people take these things way too seriously, Pat. Like, every time I post one, somebody's like, there's no chance that thing's going to happen. Like, why didn't you just trade up and get this guy? And it's like, you guys are crazy. It's just an exercise.
I look back to who the Bills actually drafted versus our last final mock draft last year. I wanted to ask you, what would you prefer? But you can't, because Travis Etienne didn't play. We have no idea what he's going to be as an NFL player. I mean, you have a little bit of an idea, but until you see it, you don't know. But Travis Etienne, Molden, Nasruddin, which may or may not be a loss, who knows, after 1 year, and McNeil, again, was pretty good, versus, how did it play out? Rizzo, Boogie, Spencer Brown. Yeah, it's tough too. And then Doyle, I think, was their 4th pick.
And that's a great point too, though, talking about Greg Rousseau. Not once. We talked about edges a ton on this podcast last year because it was either going to be a run on edges or corners at that in that first round pick, and who are you going to get, right? And I can't remember a single time that I mentioned Greg Rousseau as a first round pick.
We talked Boogie a pretty good amount.
Talked Boogie a little bit, but not so much for a first round that I remember. And so this is another thing to remember. We're hearing about some cornerback prospects, right? Like this year, and that's the main Bills target is going to be cornerback prospect. But then you hear people like, oh, well, it's a reach if you take him in first round. Well, you know what? Greg Rousseau at the time was considered a reach too, but we all talked ourselves into it and are fine. Where I think everybody's happy with Greg Rousseau and the player that we project that he can be. So again, at the same time, like we have these ideas of who these prospects are, but right up into the draft, nobody in really Bills Mafia that I know, I'm sure there's some content creators out there pounding the table for him, but the majority of us were not talking about Greg Rousseau. And then the next day we all talked ourselves into Greg Rousseau. So just keep that in mind when we're doing these mocks. And if somebody takes a cornerback that is considered by the consensus on Twitter, a second round guy, that maybe an NFL room has him as a first round guy, because that's exactly what the Bills did with Greg Rousseau a year ago.
So when it comes to actual news that might affect our mock draft, say between 1 and 2, although we didn't go to that position last week until the 5th round, I'll review last week's mock in just a minute. But Ryan Bates, the offer was matched. The Chicago offer 4 years.
Yep.
I'm pleasantly surprised. I looked like an idiot on Twitter. I wrote him off for the last week. As soon as I found out,
you're not alone.
As soon as he went to his second team to visit, I'm like, somebody's going to front load a deal. The Bills screwed themselves. Brandon Beane made a mistake. He should have gave him a second round tender, yada, 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 an extra $1.5 million. I'm like, they just lost a guy who I thought was a pretty good guard. Anyway, that didn't happen. He's back.
4 years.
That offensive line is, and I think Brandon Beane said something along the lines of he'll be competing for a starting right guard job. Yeah, he'll be competing and getting that money. Anyway, your offensive line, the starters for 2022, they're set. This probably means rest in peace. Thoughts of getting a guard at pick 25 because of Ryan Bates being back, or
does it? I don't know.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I'll tell you what, you go back to last year, they had Hughes and Addison. They were looking a year into the future, and they took Rousseau in the first round. They took Boogie in the second round. They went Spencer Brown in the third round, even though they had Dawkins and Darrell Williams, who were two pretty established tackles. Darrell Williams was a pretty established tackle.
Yeah.
After 2020. So my first instinct was like, well, guards ought to play. Kenyon Green falls to them. They ain't taking him.
Zion
Johnson falls to him. They ain't taking him. But again, you got a GM now who's drafting as much for the future as he is for the present. And we saw that last year. Yeah. Do you still think that offensive guard is definitely in play very early, especially when you consider the fact, Aaron, that Roger Saffold's here on a 1-year deal.
Right.
And he's a good fit. And I know why they brought him in, but he is also 33 years old, man.
Yeah. That's my thing, is Saffold's a rent-a player, right? Like, which is, I think, is an upgrade probably for this year. I think you did slightly upgrade. You were able to take Feliciano and Darrell Williams money and put it into Saffold and Bates, which I think is fine. That's an upgrade for me. But yeah, I don't think you've solidified this position going forward. And I still think that this is the position that has probably had the least amount of quality attention put to it. And it's affected Mitch Morse. So I'm glad that they extended. I'm glad that he's a part of the future here. But I would like to see more of a plan in place for the future of this position. Doesn't have to be that second round, but I think there's some guys throughout this draft and throughout these mocks that we can take maybe in the 4th, 5th round even, that will be available, that maybe a year with Cromer and with Saffold teaching him how to do things can come in and take that role over. And as much as I like Rick Bates here, it was a 5 or 6 game stretch of him playing well. And I'm glad that he did. And I have hope for him that he can be able to continue that. And maybe some of that plays his floor and we can have a really good above average interior offensive lineman. But I don't know that that's the case, right? Like, and I saw even a lot of Bears Twitter was upset that they didn't get him, but then they were kind of talking like, hey, this is a small sample size for a guy. He might not be the player that he finished the year on. So we'll see from him. But I don't know that if they did draft the guy early, I think that Brandon Beane's right in saying that he's going to have a chance to compete for that starting job. They're not going to give it to him. They're going to make him compete for it. Getting Ike Bacher back was also a nice thing that you're probably not going to see him early in the year here, but at least that he'll probably be available for that late season playoff push, at least as depth interior offensive line. Again, even if Rick Bates is the starter and you have Saffold as the starter, I don't think it's going to hurt them to continue to draft and load these offensive lines for future development.
No, not after what we saw from Spencer Brown last year, who was going to come in and be a developmental guy. Injuries forced him in, and he showed that he could play right away. Yep. Right now, I feel like the only position on this football team, well, there's two, and we're going to head on them real quick. Then we're going to fly through this draft. But right now, the only position where I could see them picking someone where day one, this guy could potentially start is corner. And that's because they let Levi Wallace walk, which, again, it's been weeks now, and I'm at least mildly, I'm not shocked. I wasn't stunned that he left. And I wasn't even stunned that he left on a 2-year, $8 million deal with Pittsburgh. The money's not that much. And we've talked about this. That makes you think that maybe this had a little bit more to do with football personnel thinking than not just the money. I have a hard time believing that they couldn't afford $4 million for proven a guy who's started for them for 3 years, that they couldn't afford $4 million for him. Maybe this was a thought, and I talked about this last week with somebody else. Maybe the thought was maybe Levi didn't want, for whatever reason, we don't know, but maybe Levi was upset about the way things finished in that Kansas City game. And maybe some people might have held him as a scapegoat for looking like he was out of position, although he was probably doing what he was coached to do in that defense, that scheme. Right. Maybe he had something to do with wanting to leave as much as the Bills not being able to retain him. I guess we'll never know.
Yeah.
At least we certainly don't know right now. But anyway, my point was this. Aaron, corner right now seems to be the one position where if they were to draft somebody in the first round, he's got a good chance to really come in and start from day one. Gardner, Stingley, Booth, they're not going to, it's very unlikely any of them will be available at 25. So then you look at that next level and you got Trent McDuffie, Kerry Lamb, and Roger McCreary. They appear to be like that next three. If you're going to keep your pick at 25, you don't make a move up or move down. So you got those guys, and we'll see how the draft plays out in just a couple of minutes here. But you talked about, and you drafted him last week, Cam Chiller-Britt in the third round. That could be a guy that they like. And Kobe Bryant, we talked about him last week. And ultimately didn't end up
Tariq Woolen is another guy that probably second round you could get your hands on.
We agree that corner is going to be addressed. We just are you ready to call it a lock, especially after Bates resigning? Some people have said corner is now a lock. Are you ready to call this a lock?
Yeah.
First pick? It does seem very obvious.
At first pick?
Yep.
No.
The first pick.
No, I'm never going to call anything a lock.
Not a near lock?
At first pick. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the closest they've been since the Josh Allen you knew they were taking the quarterback, right? Like, I think it's the closest they've been to a glaring hole in the starters, mostly because of Trey's injury. I think if Trey wasn't injured, and he was going to be there day one, I think a lot of people could talk themselves into Trey and Dane Jackson, the way Dane Jackson performed for the most part. And that if he takes another jump, you can maintain a floor at cornerback too that you can work with. I think everybody's antsy because Trey's injury could linger into November. And now you don't even have a cornerback one on the roster. Right now, Dane Jackson's cornerback one, and nobody feels great about that. But Brandon Beane said, and I take him at his word here, face value, about Trey's injury is separate from needs. They're treating them as two separate things, and they're not going to change their mode of operation due to that. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But I think corner is, so I believe best player available is like a weighted scale, right? You get to 25 and you have a list of players that are in that range. They might not all be first rounders. Usually, so for a little insight, when at cover one, when we're talking about our big boards and who's a first round grade and second round grade, there's no years where we have 32 first round guys, right? Like some years we have 12 first round guys. Some years it's 15 to 19, but it's never 32 first round guys. So when you're picking at 25, there's a good chance that you're getting a guy with a second round grade, late second round even. So, just to throw that out there for a little bit of transparency, that sort of thinking exists. And then, within that is need, right? So you have probably 5-6 guys at 25 that you're comfortable taking, and then it works down from need. But if you have an instance like last week where we had Jordan Davis sitting there at 25, but then you have Elam is the next cornerback on the board, and maybe you have him graded as a mid second round player, Are you going to pass up a guy that you have graded as a true first round player,
right.
top 15 player, to take a player that you have ranked in the 30s because of positional need? I don't know. There's scales to weigh. Do we feel comfortable if we take Jordan Davis that Cam Taylor-Britt isn't a huge drop off from this guy that we have rated here? Like, so those are the conversations that are happening in the war room, but none of it's cut and dry of, you have 32 first round value guys, and if it's a first round value corner, we're going to take them in the first round. Like, it's not as simple as that. So any of these ideas that some pick is going to be a lock, they have no idea how this board's going to fall. There could be a run on corners, and Elam could go before the Bills are drafting, and now you're down to really late second round guys at 25 that you're reaching to take for corner to fill a need. We don't know how it's going to play. So the idea that it's a lock, I think they'll take one in this draft. I think the Bills will probably be comfortable taking one in those first 3 rounds and knowing what they're able to do to get the most out of cornerbacks. Like, I just think we as fans have this idea of what they need at that position and the value that we put on that position. And I don't know if it matches what the Bills are up to at One Bills Drive and what they believe they can get out of corners, maybe a second, third round guy.
I fully agree with you 100%. And I would say this, like, say if FanDuel had bets right now on what position will the Bills address with their first pick. Corner obviously is going to be the betting favorite. But I'm going to tell you, man, a sleeping pick for me is running back with the first pick. Much of the chagrin of Bruce
Twitter
Nolan.
hates that, yeah.
I say that because of the J.D. McKissick signing. All right, now I know they signed Duke Johnson. Mm-hmm. I get that. But to me, Duke Johnson, and I've owned him in fantasy football, I think every year he's been in the NFL at some point on one of my teams, man. To me, he's another Breida. He's another TJ Yeldon. I think he might have moments. He might have a couple games. He'll be inactive a lot. I could be wrong, and I hope I am. But I think he's that type of player. But McKissick was signed originally, and obviously he ended up back with Washington. I think he had a significant role on this team. Like, he wasn't going to be another Breida, and he wasn't going to be another TJ Yeldon. I think he was in line to have a significant role on this football team. That's just my opinion. Obviously, we'll never know now. But I think if there's one veteran in this group, somebody that nobody's talking about right now that I think might be in trouble when this draft's over, I think it might be Zach Moss. I don't know why. Fair. I think McKissick was, I think Zach Moss would have been the third. Now, look, cutting Zach Moss financially ain't going to save shit. You know what I'm saying? Now, maybe Zach Moss becomes the TJ Yeldon, and he spends a lot of inactive time waiting to get an opportunity. But I think he can easily be the odd guy out. Not necessarily Duke Johnson if the Bills were to go running back as early as round 1. And there's a couple really good ones. We ended up in our mock draft last week, we ended up getting a running back in the second round who ended up being the first running back off the board. Let's recap that too. I'm going to go pull up last week's mock draft. So this was version 1, Aaron and Quinn and I did. Jordan Davis, defensive tackle, fell to us at 25. We couldn't pass him up. Not a need. Couldn't pass him up. Round 2, we took Kenneth Walker the third, running back from Michigan State. Round 3, Cam Taylor-Britt, the corner we talked about from Nebraska. Round 4, we got a receiver, Velus Jones Jr. from Tennessee. Cam Jurgens and a guard, interior lineman. We got in the 5th round. And then we got Johnny Thomas, a safety from Georgia Tech, and Jalen Naylor, wide receiver from Michigan, in the 6th. And then in the 7th round, we took Aaron Hansford, a linebacker from Texas A&M. Last week was a fun exercise because, again, things happened that we didn't expect. Jordan Davis falling to 25, which, for the record, I don't think there's any real chance that's going to happen, but it did in our draft, and we couldn't pass that up. But Kenneth Walker, we took a running back in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
If him or Hall or somebody, like maybe Hall, and I've seen some, I think Daniel Jeremiah might have in his latest mock draft, he had the Bills taking him at 25.
Yep.
So
I've seen it. I've seen a couple of people talk about Hall at 25. And every time I've taken Hall in a mock and posted it, people are like, no way he's there 57, which, again, I can't help the Draft Network's big board has him there. And the Draft Network big board is going to be tough for us. We've got, 4 more of these?
4, including this one, yeah.
Yeah, including this one. And if it continues to fall the way that I've seen them falling, where the running backs are stacked around to, you guys are going to see me taking running backs a whole lot here. Because if you can get a guy that any one of those 3 guys, I'm not one of these people that pounds the table about running backs in the first round. I don't care. I don't care about your first round values or any of that. We're picking 25th pick, right? I just want to add good football players to a team that's just needs a little nudge to get over to becoming the Super Bowl team this year. And so if you can get a running back that's going to be a dynamic player for Josh Allen, do it. If you can get a guy that I would take at 25, at 57, oh Jesus, that's a no-brainer. That's a grand slam for me. So I'm happy to do it. But it definitely gets a lot of hate. It sparks a lot of conversation on Twitter about the value of running backs.
It does. And I'll say this too about the running backs. I do think one of those three could be on the board at 57 in real life. I don't think all three of them will be on the board like they were for us last week. And running back, one last point here, and we talked about this a little bit last week. Devin Singletary is going in the final year of his contract. Bills, maybe they don't want to pay him a big second contract, especially if he plays well this year. So taking a running back at 25, 57, very realistic. So here's what we're going to do, man. We're going to fire this up. We won't spend as much time talking about the players because we're already 45 minutes in.
Let's fire through a draft.
I can't seem to shut myself up. If you're listening to this, great. If you're watching on YouTube, probably this experience will be better, which, by the way, talking podcast.
I mean, we're handsome. We're pretty handsome. YouTube. So
you look pretty good tonight, man, by the way. So let me fire this up. And by the way, I don't know how that happened last week, but somehow, some way, when the draft was done, I had to go back and listen for our picks because I lost I lost what happened to the picks. But anyway, to recap for people, we're using the Draft Network model. They are simulating the other 31 teams in the NFL. We have no control who gets picked in front and after us.
And we're no trades.
No trades this week. We will have trades next week.
Maybe.
And
we'll see what the offers are.
Next I don't even have the
no, I was gonna say next week we'll see what the offers.
Yeah, next week, we're gonna go through the offers. We'll spend more time doing the mock draft next week because there will be trades, available for us. So anyway, 7 rounds, normal speed. Let's start the draft. We're kicking it off. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you could see it on your screen. If not,
you're
listening.
So from time to time, I'll read off any names of interest that I'm interested in. So we already have 2 corners off the board at 9 and 10. 2 more off the board at 12 and 13. So it was Andrew Booth and McDuffie off the board. Jordan Davis is already off the board here. Here's the situation where Elam's off the board at 16th overall. So now you have a number of corners. Daxton Hill is another one who he's listed as a safety, but I've heard rumors that he could play corner. I don't know if the Bills would be interested in that, but he's off the board. Jahan Dotson's off the board, which is another popular pick for the Bills. If you scroll down on the who's been picked so far, so Zion Johnson, a guy we were just talking about, maybe do you take him as the interior offensive lineman? He's already off the board. Drake London, a wide receiver that I know some folks like, he's gone. So then let's go scroll over to the players available. So,
well, here, this is interesting right off the bat for me, Aaron, because, and I remember this now from last year as well. This didn't happen to us in the first week. I don't think this board played out very well for the Bills in terms of players, like positions that they might have necessarily want to target, especially if it's a corner or even a wide receiver. Now, we're obviously not going to even take a second look at quarterbacks. Now, again, Rick Bates signing, and now you got me calling him Rick instead of Ryan. But anyway, Kenyon Green is on the board for us.
Right.
Here is a predicament that I didn't know. It didn't happen last week, and I haven't yet to see a mock where he would last there. But I see and we haven't spent a second talking about this, a linebacker on the board right now. Devin Lloyd, who is pretty highly touted. I see him going in the top 10 to 15 pretty much everywhere. I feel like he has to warrant some type of consideration at this point.
It's hard. That both these are hard. So Kenyon Green is a guy that I'm not actually as high on. I like Zion Johnson a lot more. I don't know that I'm super high on Green. Tough value to pass up here for sure. If there was a trade scenario, this might be a spot that makes trade sense because you've got that 5th round pick, which would have, you have the 1st round pick, which would have that 5th year option. You have 2 quarterbacks on the board with Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett. So if you had a team that was interested in coming up to get a quarterback, this would be a good spot. And then they get that 5th year option on a project quarterback type thing. You only have 6 picks left to get that 5th year option in on a guy. So I could see a team being interested in trading. So this would be maybe a possible trade back scenario for you. But so with these players available, I think this is where you're having that argument, Pat, of player value on your board versus need. And what you can get out of a guy right now. So you have Green, Lloyd, Chris Olave, who's a guy I like a lot. I would love to add him to this offense. Treylon Burks is a guy that a lot of people like. I don't hate Treylon Burks, but he's not a guy that really I'm running the card up for. Ajabu is a dude who got hurt, tore his Achilles in his pro day, which is just heartbreaking hate to see. But he's a guy that I would love to take, even though you're all set at edge with some youth here. I wouldn't mind adding an edge. But if I'm looking at this list, I think my pick here would be Olave. I think I would just add a dynamic, fast, super fast wide receiver to give Josh Allen more weapons. I'm kind of addicted to this idea of just loading Josh's cupboard up and see what happens.
Well, I mean, you're the GM, so ultimately you're going to make the pick. We're going to take him. I would have a hard time with Lloyd, and I'm thinking about maybe beyond this year, but
it's tough. I get what you're saying.
Well, we made the selection with Olive, and let me say this.
And Lloyd went off the board, and Green went off the board right away.
Yeah, now I'm looking to see how these running backs play out because, again, I hope they don't all get to 57 because, again, this will feel completely unrealistic to me if they're all there. I guess you never know. But anyway, back to receiver. As
Walker's
this is getting to us,
Go
Walker is off the board. Good. Because we took him last week, so it kind of mix it up a little bit. I don't know, man. I think they like Jamison Crowder and McKenzie as their fourth receiver. You draft a receiver at 25, and then you're basically saying, McKenzie, you're in trouble already.
He is though. His job's not guaranteed. He's in the same position that he was a year ago. He's gotten on a cheap deal. There's not going to be a lot of money to walk away from him. If you can improve that, then all for it. And then
plus Crowder's here 1 year too.
Crowder's similar to Saffold, right? We were just talking about, could you take a interior offensive lineman early on? And, this might be a situation where Olave takes a little bit of time to learn the pro game, God, it's also okay to have embarrassment of riches. We saw last year with Emmanuel Sanders going down, how quickly your depth of the wide receiver room can get tested.
Good point.
I'd feel much better knowing that you have Jamison Crowder and Olave back there versus trying to fit Isaiah McKenzie into a receiver role that I'm not sure that he's ready to take. So I'm okay with adding wide receiver there. But now we're in a predicament a little bit here because Kyler Gordon is off the board, which is a cornerback I like. So he went to Pittsburgh at 52, which is actually a little bit closer than I've seen him get there. You usually have to trade up quite a bit to get him. Tariq Woolen is another cornerback that I really like. He's off the board. George Pickens, although we just took a wide receiver, he's a wide receiver I like there in the second round if you went a different direction. If you scroll down there on the who's been drafted side, Christian Watson, a wide receiver I like. Kenneth Walker went at 45. Let's see here. Yeah, that's about it. Okay. Scroll up.
So, I think you're left there with a predicament because I got two of the three running backs. You got Hall who we just talked about. A lot of people are taking him in the first round, and Spiller as well. And then you got a corner if you like Roger McCreary. He's there too. So you kind of got a dilemma right now.
I like Travis Jones a lot too, even though the Bills just did a lot at interior defensive line. So they're probably not going to go that route with Travis Jones there, but I do like him quite a bit. I think for this draft, just so I don't get killed on the Twitter, I think I'm going to go with McCreary. Let's take a corner early.
Okay. Done deal. Roger McCreary. By the way, write these down just in case something happens here. And so we took the receiver and we took McCreary. All right, so we're loading up and we're getting to the third round right now. All right, so we got a corner and we got a receiver, two skill position players. Look, by the way,
all still sitting there, man. I'd have trouble not trading up.
They both would have an opportunity, I think, to play right away. And I think maybe in McCreary's case, why not come in and have an opportunity to start right away?
Sure. Hall's off the board. He just came off the board here. James Cook, a running back that I would have loved to have taken here in the third, just came off the board. That kind of hurts a little bit because that was a little bit what I was banking on, not taking a running back last round, was that James Cook would be sitting there and I could take him. So let's see who else is off the board. Calvin Austin, the third, although we already have a wide receiver in this draft, but you've
talked him up pretty well.
Yeah, he'd be a guy that'd be around here now. Chad Muma is off the board, another linebacker prospect that you could take. I feel that linebacker thing, going back to that first round, I'd feel more comfortable taking a linebacker now than I would then. So, all right, let's see what's here.
There's a lot of tight ends at the top of the draft network, available board. I'm not really sure that I want to go touch a tight end any part of day one or day two.
I don't know. This is tough though, dude, because like if OJ Howard doesn't pan out to be the player that he was projected to be, you still have that sort of need there. And I like Isaiah Likely. I like Jeremy Ruckert quite a bit. But I agree with you. That's a tough.
It'd be tough to get a path a path to the playing field for a tight end this year. Now, if you're looking into the future, sure, OJ Howard's here on a 1-year deal, and until Dawson Knox ends up resigning or getting extended, you never know what could happen, man.
It is.
Tight end salaries have exploded too. So I'm not saying it would be a terrible pick. All I'm saying is taking one in the 3rd round. I don't think you're going to get on the field this year, minus an injury.
Yeah, it's tough. And then Cam Taylor-Britt's still there. We could go corner back to back again. Didn't we do that last week? Here, scroll down, see who else is available here. Cam Taylor-Britt. I like JoJo Domann, also out of Nebraska. Let's see what linebackers are available or running backs are available right now. Maybe
we'll go to running backs.
Yeah, I think we can wait a little bit. I'd like to get maybe Pierce later on. If we could wait a little bit, where is he?
Williams from Notre Dame's a guy I selfishly like. I don't know if he's going to.
I like Williams a lot. Yeah, but we could probably get him maybe in the 6th or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the 5th. All right, let's go back to regular view, and so I'm going to give us 3 options here, quick to talk through real quick, so we don't spend too much time on this. I'm going to ask you either Jerry Ruckert, the tight end out of Ohio State, JoJo Domann, who is the linebacker out of Nebraska, or Cam Taylor-Britt, who is the cornerback out of Nebraska. These are 3 players I'd like. That's who sort of I'm struggling with mentally. Of who would I take here right now? Do we back up? Do we double dip at corner? I'm happy to do it. JoJo Domann, I think, is more of a Matt Milano style linebacker, but could be a special teamer. And who knows? I think a lot of people are assuming that Tremaine Edmonds is the guy that's going to be gone because Milano's already had a contract, but I could see an extension getting done with Edmonds and then Milano being the guy they move on from if he's a little bit easier to replace. And then, like we just talked about with the tight end position, it's more likely than not, no matter how the scenario goes, either OJ Howard isn't as spectacular as we think he's going to be, and he's only on a 1-year deal, and maybe they just move on from him, or he's spectacular and he has that breakout year, and the Bills won't be able to afford to bring him back anyway, and they're going to get a comp pick out of the deal. So I think you need something in the tight end room in the future either way.
I like the idea of double dipping on the corner because, first of all, the Bills did it twice last year. They did it defensive end, and they came right back and then did it again with the offensive tackle.
And Dave Jackson's still a question mark.
None of those guys were drafted to start. Trey White being 100% is not a certainty before the season starts. And again, Dane Jackson played pretty well last year. He was certainly serviceable. But give me McCreary and Britt. First of all, let them battle. One of them will be the 3rd corner or whatever. And you got really good corner depth, I think. And it's a move for the future too. So I'm good with that. You're good with it too?
Yeah, I'll take Cam Taylor-Britt in every single. He's my draft crush this year, so
we might do that. All right. Well, we're 2 for 2. We're going to the 4th round, and while it's loading up, I want to ask you a hypothetical. Yeah. Maybe you think I'm fucking crazy, and this is the guy. I almost made it a full hour without swearing. But let's just say, because there is one punter on this draft board right now,
correct,
the only one.
Yep.
If he was there, is the 4th round too early to draft a punter, regardless of how good he is?
I don't know, man. It's hard. This is one of those things where maybe I'm blinded by Bills Mafia on Twitter, because if you don't take a punter at this point in a draft, people are going to just butcher you. They're going to butcher you. So if you wait too long, he is going to get taken.
Well, we're on the board.
We're on the board. He's the top player available.
He's the top player on the board. It's almost like I knew that shit was going to happen somehow. He's not going to play much, but I mean, from what I understand, and I'm no expert, I'm certainly no punter expert. But I've heard that this guy has the potential to come into the league and be one of the best punters in the NFL immediately. I mean, it is a position you could solidify in the 4th round, but you also look at all right, this could be a position where maybe, because we haven't touched running back yet, we haven't touched tight end or a linebacker or something like that. You could add depth to your roster, or you could go get a guy who's going to be your punter.
Interior offensive line. So let's scroll down to the players that are, let's see who just got drafted. First of all, Kyron Williams, gone, a guy that you
Where did he go, by the way?
So he went to the New England Patriots.
Now I got to hate him. I go from loving him to I go over hating him. And by the way, he went 3 picks before the Bills were up.
Alec Pierce, wide receiver out of Cincinnati, a dude I like quite a bit. If you didn't go early wide receiver, I think he could be a nice guy eventually. Let's see. JoJo Domann went to the New York Giants at 120 or 112. that's about it, I think, from that fourth round there. Okay, so then let's look over here. So we got Matt Arezia, the punter up there. Velus Jones Jr., a guy we took last week. I don't think you're going to double dip at wide receiver.
No,
for
not
that
if you
kind of player.
If you take one in the first round.
No. Scroll down a little bit more here. A little more. Kobe Bryant, we can't take another corner. Hassan Haskins is a running back that I wouldn't hate as that third running back. I think you could more lean on him as like a pound the rock kind of guy. That might just be the Michigan fan in me speaking. Again, Cam Jurgens is still down there, so we could add some stuff still. I think you're going to see some other interior offensive linemen past Cam Jurgens. So hell, let's take a punter. Let's go in the fourth round and take a punter. And I think that we still have plenty of opportunities here with these next 3 picks I think we have left.
It hurts my heart to pick a punter. It hurts my heart to take it, but I have to. And I'll tell you one trend, and part of the fun of doing these with you every week is starting to notice a trend. And now I'm noticing that Kobe Bryant has been there for the taking twice. We haven't taken him yet because we went with Britt. But now I'm thinking that maybe, the way this plays out, we might be able to go with
you could take a corner in the first 2 picks and then back it up with Kobe Bryant versus Cam Taylor-Britt being your second. I get it.
Right. All right, so we're working towards the 5th round. So what have we went so far? We went receiver.
Olave, McCreary, Cam Taylor-Britt, and punter.
All right, man.
Super
punter in the 4th round. I'd have to look it up. I don't know when the last time a punter's been taken that high in the NFL draft. But again, it's a position that we wouldn't have to worry about. And it was bad last year. It didn't happen. They didn't punt often, but he was really bad. So, Matt Hawk, and he's not going to be back, by the way.
Yeah. I think that you're not going to want to hear it, but him learning how to hold might be a thing. We might have to figure that out.
Yeah, I guess. You can come down and hold from the stands.
Yeah, right.
All right. So now we're here in round 5. I don't know if you want to take a look at couple of the guys that it went before the Bills are on the clock here, which is at pick 168.
Yeah, nothing standing out to me crazy. If you want to scroll real quick, Jack Cohen, quarterback out of Notre Dame.
My man, Notre Dame.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like this idea of taking a quarterback still.
5th round wouldn't be bad. You think maybe he could develop into a competent number 2 at some point, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I watched enough Notre Dame games to not love him, but
he came on.
He
was terrible.
He was pretty bad. He had some pretty bad games.
But then he came on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can already tell you right now. I know we're kind of biting off last week, but you took him last week in this spot, and I really liked him a lot. I read up on him after you drafted him last week. Cam Jurgens, that's another guy I really wouldn't mind targeting here again. I think we did that last week too.
We did, and the other guy would be Smith out of Virginia. Where is he? The Virginia Tech, the interior offensive line. I'm going to butcher his name, Lectis Smith.
Oh, yeah. Yep. You talked about him last week, too.
That would be maybe a guy that I would take. He's probably more of a guard prospect than I think Jurgens is probably more of a center prospect that can be rotational. He can play guard or play center. That is the thing I like about Jurgens is right now I don't know who that John Feliciano backup swing interior offensive lineman is right now. I think maybe Bacher would be it if healthy, but he's not healthy. So I'm happy to take Jurgens here, but Smith would be a guy that I'd be also happy to take at this spot. If you scroll down a little bit more, I think Chris Paul will probably still be on the board. He might be even further down. Thomas Booker is a dude, interior defensive lineman. Really, I was talking to Eric over at Cover One, and early on in this process, we were talking about him being kind of like a poor man's Harrison Phillips out of Stanford, like similar build, same type of big motor guy. Chris Paul's down there at 194, so that'd be another guy maybe if you didn't take, or maybe we double dip at interior offensive lineman when it comes available. But I'd be happy to take Cam Jurgens here again and continue that streak.
Yeah, I like him. Like I said, I read up on him after you took him last week.
Yeah. And so Kobe Bryant's sitting up there at the top. Obviously, we've already taken 2 corners. He's sitting there, but this is what I'm saying. Like, again, we don't know if these players will end up being anything, but in terms of needs and what we're learning about these players, it feels pretty good in terms of how the Bills' needs line up with the players that are available.
I agree. And you know what? It might be time to start studying up on Britt and Kobe Bryant, because if one of these corners are good enough, if you come to that conclusion, hey, maybe you don't need to go get a corner at 25 or even 57. under that circumstance. You mentioned Ike Bacher as this is getting ready to roll now towards the 6th round, which we're about to be there. So let's just say Ike Bacher gets back and he's healthy. And you brought up something that got me thinking. If Mitch Morse had a significant injury, could you see a scenario where maybe Bates, who does play center, has played center, could go to center and Bacher could go to guard, and that would be how they would replace Mitch Morse?
Sure.
Anyway, all right. So we're here in the 6th round now.
Yep.
And I think the Bills got 2 picks in the 6th round.
Yeah.
If I'm correct anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So
for now, we'll see if how long they keep those. So off the board, I'm not seeing it. Smith went to the Bengals, which they need all the help they can get on that line still. So that makes sense. Keep scrolling down there real quick. Nothing. Kobe Bryant went to the Packers, a couple picks after us there. So, all right, let's look over who's available. Reed Blankenship, oddly enough, out of Middle Tennessee, was a guy that I liked last year a little bit. Not very athletic, doesn't jump off screen, but he's always making plays. He's one of these, like, he's a white guy safety who's like not a super athletic dude, but he's
wasn't
just jumps
in the
off.
Draft last year. I feel like his name sounds so familiar to me.
I think he was, and then he pulled out of it. Maybe he was not. He could have gone back to school, and so I think he did just go back to school. But he was in mock drafts and stuff like that.
I remember the name.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, he's a dude that pops off. I don't know that their Bills want to take a safety there, but or whether or not he's a fit, but at the very least, I could see him being a huge special teams type guy, which is, we're kind of in that spot. Thomas Booker is a guy I like a lot. Again, an interior defensive line might be really tough for a 3-tech type guy to break into this roster today. But that doesn't mean you can't have him as a developmental guy here down the road. So that'd be a name that I'm looking at here. Scroll down a little bit further here. Chris Paul sitting there, man. I like Chris Paul. He's a mean dude. He's a big dude. I'd be happy to add him into this interior offensive lineman as well. And then Wanye Thomas, a guy we took last week, he might be there again at our next pick, but he's another kind of sort of in the same line as Nazar Ladine, maybe a little less athletic, but kind of a tweener linebacker, safety. No one's really sure where to put that guy. I have a hard time not falling for those kind of guys. So I guess for me, it would be down to, Chris Paul and Thomas Booker. And I think Chris Paul would probably fit in maybe a little bit better in the immediate of depth at interior offensive line.
Yeah, I like it. You want to pull the trigger?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Chris Paul.
Not to be confused with the point guard for the Phoenix Suns.
Phoenix Suns. All right, interior offensive lineman out of, what was that, Tulsa?
Yeah.
All right, man, we're rolling along here. Almost done. I think we got 2 more picks left.
2 more picks coming right up here.
Maybe if I didn't spend 20 minutes talking about Will Smith and Phil Collins. That's all right, though, man. Where are we at here?
Thomas Booker went off the board. The Patriots, man. Patriots are getting a bunch of our guys.
They're getting the guys you like. So the New England Patriots are having a really good mock draft version too right now.
At least Aaron Quinn mock draft at least. Reed Blankenship went to the Ravens. I feel like that'd be a good spot for him, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Trying to see where else. Isaac Taylor Stewart, a cornerback out of USC, is a guy that I'm going to get a little bit more eyes on. He's always available. He's always out there. And some of the reports I've read on him are all right. And this is the thing we got to keep in mind as Bills fans. Again, I've said it multiple times. They're going to get more out of corners. And so sort of that conversation that you were having earlier about, reading up on a Kobe Bryant or even a Cam Taylor-Britt type of guy is, your point was maybe they don't have to take a corner early on, but I think maybe it gives you insurance that you could maybe draft the guy on traits like an Elam, draft the guy that's fast and big, and maybe he's struggled in zone and maybe struggling and stuff. And so while he develops, you have a guy that's floor is a little higher, more like a Levi Wallace that you can bring in. And at the very least, you have a steady player that you know what you're going to get out of, but you draft a high traits guy early on as a gamble that, hey, if he does pan out to who we think we're going to have 2 top elite athlete corners in Trey White and this other guy. And if it doesn't work out, we've got Kobe Bryant or Cam Taylor-Britt as a backup insurance plan. So that's sort of how I see that falling out. But to this pick here, 203, Wanye Thomas is one you're going to have a tough time, man. I really like this guy. I don't know why. He's probably never going to do anything in the NFL. He'll probably be totally out of the league in 5-6 years, but I like him. Jalen Naylor is a guy we took last week. I don't know that they need to stock up on wide receivers in that type of way.
Yeah, I can't see them taking 2 receivers in a draft, especially if one of them's at 25 like we took, man.
It'd be
I
tough,
think there's almost no path at the roster.
It's hard.
You never know, but
I mean, McKenzie could lose his job. That's not guaranteed. Marcus Stevenson could lose his job again, no guarantee. But
McKenzie might lose his job with our first round pick already.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, this Bills roster is at this point, we're in the 6th round, that these guys might not make the roster no matter who we pick.
Yep, I agree.
We saw it last year. Guys that make the roster ended up on other teams. So, I mean, you're looking who are guys that can contribute on special teams, who are guys that can contribute to the practice squad. So for the special teams aspect, I really like Wanye Thomas.
All right, let's take him. All right, we're taking Wanye Thomas, a safety from.
I think that's how you say his name, right? Wanye.
Well, it's how you and I are going to say his name anyway. Yeah. Till we find out otherwise. All right, so we are now headed in the 7th round, and our final pick here.
This is where we should be taking a punter, but everything's all out of whack. Right, there's no way he would have lasted this long. I think the next time, now that we know the punter's on the board, maybe we don't take him and see where he ends up.
Okay, that's a good point, and that's fun. And again, this is part of this exercise that we talk about doing every week. Is not even so much who we end up taking for the Bills, but how the board's playing out and how some guys are consistently there, or sometimes are there, and then sometimes they're not. All right, so the Bills are on the clock. Pick one. What's this? 231. So this is their last pick.
Yeah.
We don't need to overthink this.
Running backs available. We did not take a running back in this draft. So that's one of these things, is again, to the point of the exercise, is we passed in that 2nd round to take one of the top 3 running backs, at least, because Hall and Spiller were there in the 2nd round.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't take either one of those guys. Hall looked like he might be there in the 3rd round, then he wasn't. And James Cook, who is a running back that I've been taking a bunch in the 3rd round, also wasn't there. There was other running backs available that we continued to pass on. So now we're sitting here in the 7th.
I feel like the Bills have one luxury between running back and receiver, Aaron. I feel like you could take one of them if you want to take one on either day 1 or day 2.
Sure.
I think you could go running back or receiver. I don't think they're going to go running back and receiver, but I do.
You can't stop me from adding Josh Allen weapons. You can't do it. You can't stop me. So none of these guys I'm in love with. I mean, you can add one and put them on the practice squad and see if they pan out. But go back to overall players here. We shouldn't spend too much time on a 7th round.
Yeah, this guy is going to be a practice squad guy anyway.
Yeah, so. Here you got to close that running back one out. There you go. Tyquan Thornton. I know we took a wide receiver, but that's a guy I'd be willing to put on our practice squad. Jermaine Waller, cornerback out of Virginia Tech. That's a guy I'll throw on my practice squad or see if he makes a special teams move. We took 2 corners. That's tough. Scroll down a little bit here. Trey Turner. Yeah, I'm looking. It looks like a lot of wide receivers available. All right, let's take Smoke Monday. That's one of probably the most elite name in the draft, safety out of Auburn. And I actually like the player. I think he could be a quality special teams guy, but I don't think you're going to go safety back to back at this point. Maybe you do because they're just special teams guys and you're trying to get guys in the building. But Smoke Monday's a guy I continue to take over and over again. But scroll up a little bit here. Let's take whatever. Let's take the running back out of Florida State and just add a running back to this practice squad room. Corbin there. Corbin out of Florida State. It's a guy I'm gonna have to go look up, but we're gonna take the best running back available, put him on our team, put him on our practice squad, see what happens, see if he forces that final spot on the practice squad off the roster.
Now I got it up on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. Last week when we did this, when the draft ended, it automatically kicked us out and resetted another mock draft. Hopefully it doesn't do that again. So then we can read these off. The draft's about to end right now. All right. So, and by the way, I don't think the Bills, for the record, what do they got? 8 draft picks. I don't think they're going to make 8 draft picks.
I don't think they're leaving with 8.
I think they'll be doing some maneuvering at some point. I'm pretty confident of that. All right. Finishing your draft. All right, here we go. So we actually will be able to, and I'll tell you what, because you can see the screen better than I can, quite frankly. So do you want to read these off?
Sure. So we went at 25. We stayed with all of our picks here again. At 25, we went with Chris Olave, wide receiver out of Ohio State. At 57, we went with Roger McCreary, cornerback out of Auburn. 89, we doubled up on cornerback again with my draft crush, Cam Taylor-Britt, at cornerback out of Nebraska. Then we went at 130 with punter, maybe the highest drafted punter here in the last decade. I'm not sure. We'll have to go look that up. With Matt Azaria or Raise. I don't know how to say his name, to be honest. I just read it.
He's the guy who's going to be kicking the ball. If
monster
leg.
Can't hold a kick, but he put it through the put it down in the Coffin's corner there. Punter out of San Diego State. 168, we took Cam Jurgens, interior offensive lineman out of Nebraska, sort of a swing interior offensive lineman. And then we doubled up again, 2 double up positions here with Chris Paul at 185, interior offensive lineman out of Tulsa, big, mean dude that I like a lot. And then at 203, a consistent pick for me has been Wanye Thomas, sort of a hybrid tweener linebacker, safety, special teamer. And then we at 231 took Jashawn Corbin, running back out of Florida State, that I don't know anything about, but he was the top running back available, and we missed on running back. So we're hoping this guy can maybe stick to the practice squad and be a fan favorite, that everyone's pounding the table that he doesn't get enough respect and doesn't get in on this team. So pretty good draft though, Pat. I like this draft a little bit.
I like this draft more than the first one. And it's not that I love Jordan Davis, the player, and I like Kenneth Walker, the player that we got in our first pick or draft. I just never felt that was realistic to get them at 25 and 57 respectively. Sure. Yeah. You can't get everything in a draft. It's just, that's the way it goes. I like that we double down on corner, and I like that we double down on guard, interior offensive lineman depth in the mid part of the draft, in the 5th and the 6th round as well, because I think both those guys would have an opportunity to make the team. You got another weapon, which you love. You said you can never have enough weapons for Josh Allen in the cupboard. So we got a receiver in the 1st round. The only thing, looking back at this draft now, that we didn't really get to address, that maybe the Bills don't even address anyway, is running back, man. That's about it. So, and we continue, by the way, through 2 drafts now. One constant is we haven't touched a linebacker because, and then I'm going to let you go too. I don't know, and I'm going to spend a lot of time over this next week researching. I don't know a lot of potential inside linebackers. Every linebacker I read about that's highly touted whatsoever is more like a Milano type player than a Tremaine Edmonds type player. There doesn't seem to be a lot of quality inside linebackers who are athletic in this draft. So
I think there are some that we don't see them lining up with the way the Draft Network's big board is to where the Bills picks are, which I don't know if that's close to reality or not. We won't know that until draft night. But the ones that I've sort of looked at, your Chad Mumas type guys, never seem to be available. When we get into trades, we might have to trade into one of the spots to get a guy like that. The other thing for me, Pat, and this one you'll have a hard time, I'm maybe blindly so convinced, I really think that the Bills are all in on keeping Tremaine Edmonds locked up here as a big part of the future. I think they're higher on Tremaine Edmonds than maybe anyone else is.
Yeah. It can certainly happen. I mean,
I've been wrong a lot before, so
this won't
be the first time. Yeah, I think a couple things about Tremaine, and this doesn't need to turn into an Aaron Quinn loves Tremaine Edmonds, because it's not that. He's not like my guy that I'm going to pound the table for, but he's better than people think. He stacks up better with his peers than folks think, and he does a lot of stuff in this defense that doesn't get talked about in terms of that type of length and athleticism stuff he does that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And then they haven't really put the right offensive line or the right defensive lineman type of guys in front of him to get a true evaluation of the player that he can be. So he's been doing things that other linebackers aren't asked to do in the league that make it look bad a lot of the times on some of these low lights when you see Tremaine missing a gap or something like that. Like he's got some responsibilities that other guys in the league at his position aren't asked to do. And so some of that's mixed in too.
Yeah, he's not easily replaceable, if nothing else. And I'm finding it out just through his mock draft exercise we do. All right, everyone, give Aaron a follow at Aaron Quinn 716. Of course, check out the Cover One Buffalo football podcast he does with Greg Thompson. Those guys are both great, man. This was fun. And next week we are going to do drafts. Well, we're not automatically going to do drafts. Are on the table next week. We're not just going to do a draft. Or I'm sorry, we're not going to do a trade just to do a trade, but offers do come up on this.
We'll discuss them.
We will discuss them for sure. Thanks, buddy. This was fun as always. Appreciate you, man. You know that.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. I'll be back with a brand new show on Friday. Take care.